I'm really excited to have you on the show, partly because we never get to talk because I'm banned from going to Canada. You're often banned from coming to the United States because you always have so many exciting things happening. And, every time I talk to you, it feels like you've gotten arrested another half dozen times. So I'd love to hear more about what you've been up to. But the most important reason I'm really happy to talk to you is you were just in court supporting some activists who are your co-defendants in a case involving a sit-in at a big pig farm in Quebec. So can you just share a little bit about why you were in court yesterday?
Right. We 5 of us were convicted criminally by a judge who gave us community hours, and we had people who it was their first time offence, and they were really upset at having a criminal record. It does affect your career, and it does affect your traveling. So we engaged.
And this is first time offense for doing civil disobedience inside of a pig farm. I think you were saying before we got cut off that there were 12 of you in total who just walked in. Okay.
Yeah.
How'd you get in?
Through a door.
Through a door, duh. Was it just unlocked?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so 12 of you just stroll right into this pig farm. And there's some really powerful photos. I mean, the photo on the Facebook page for the pig trial, if you want to find this, if you're listening to this and you want to find it, just go look up on Facebook, Instagram, Pig Trial 4. Yeah. Because Jenny's, actually, you've been in 3 of the 4 pig trials, I think, right?
I've been in 2 of them.
2 of them, okay.
Yeah.
So 2 out of the 4 pig trials. But there's just an incredibly powerful photo of you sitting right in front of a mother pig who's trapped in, I think it's a gestation crate.
Right.
And there's a cop in the background trying to get you to leave. So, so first of all, what made you all decide to occupy this pig farm in the first place?
Well, it's all about exposing the conditions and garnering media attention, mainstream media, and letting the public know that standard practices inside any, pig farm, air quote, include gestation crates, include, pigs living in absolute misery, fire risk, worker conditions. I mean, pig farms are just like nightmares, and we want to expose that in any way we can.
Yeah.
So
when was the first time you went into a pig farm?
Myself, back in, I think it was the start of 2016. Yeah, 2017. Okay. And that was in another province. That was in Ontario, Canada.
Ontario, yeah. And that was the one that you rescued. I'm forgetting her name. What was her name?
We rescued a few pigs from there. And now the public rescues are on the DXE site. What were the names?
It was so long ago. What was her name? I know I met one of them.
You did. I've got the best picture with you.
I know. It was an amazing experience.
Yeah.
She was such a sweet little girl.
Yes. Yeah. And
so
pigs
back in 2016, I know they are.
Pigs are amazing. Yeah, I mean, one minute you're kind of, cradling them in your arms. And then a couple of years later, they're as big as a sofa.
Yeah, I think the pig, I believe, is the mammal that, because of selective breeding and all the weird genetics we've imprinted into them, they go from the smallest size to the largest size of any mammal on the planet Earth. Because, there are a lot of big mammals out there, elephants, cows. I mean, like a Holstein cow can get up to 2,000, 3,000 pounds. When they're born, they're like 120 pounds. So they're already pretty big when they come out. But piglets are 2 pounds. So that's like 1 kilogram for the Canadian and European audience.
Yeah.
And they get up to 800 pounds, right? Which is like 400 kilograms. So the gap between how big they are when they're tiny and how large they are when they're adults is massive. And a big part of the reason is because of all the weird genetics. I mean, we've bred these animals that in the wild, a wild boar might be a couple hundred pounds. I mean, the big ones might be 300 pounds, 400 pounds, but we bred them to become these massive giants. But one of the most sad things about the experience of dealing with one of these big mother pigs, or big male pigs too, is they're so gentle.
They really
They're
are.
like these huge giants, and they could crush you just from falling on you. And I don't know what your experience. When was the first time you met a farm pig?
Oh, I met a farm pig way back in Liverpool in the UK, and it was at a sanctuary. So that would be, maybe 90, 97, 98, that type of year. And it didn't click with me at that time. somehow.
Really? So you
And
weren't
it
a
was,
vegetarian?
um, I was just becoming, to visit a sanctuary,
Uh-huh.
I would have been involved already. So yes, I became vegan in, it was like 92.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you were vegan when you met the farm pig, because if you became vegan in 92 and you met the farm pig in
Yeah.
97.
But it didn't
Okay.
click as much as,
Huh.
I have such a connection to pigs now. I mean,
Yeah, I know.
I've been amongst so many, and maybe it was because I saw them in a sanctuary, and I didn't
Yeah.
realize the life that they lead inside commercial farms. And once I saw a pig inside a commercial, or any, call them commercial farm, call them factory farm, call them farm. Once I saw that and I saw the misery, then something just clicked.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Once I made eye contact and I was sitting
Yeah.
in front of a mother pig, and when I was looking after the baby piglets, after they've been rescued, then it's such a deep connection now. I mean, there's such characters. They have a language of their own.
Yeah, they do.
Be next to a
Well,
pig who's grunting in contentment, and it's the best feeling ever. It really is.
yeah.
Well,
I
you
feel
know.
like almost every pig I've interacted with loves belly rubs.
Right.
Because they're such large animals and they have pretty sensitive skin. I mean, it's tough skin, but it's pretty sensitive. And it's pretty hard for them to scratch their own bellies.
Yes.
I think almost every farm pig I've ever met loves belly rubs.
Yeah.
And to the point that once you start scratching them, they will plop their 800-pound body on the side and just start grunting in joy for every scratch and just look at you and beg you and plead and say, please continue scratching, which is pretty amazing. I'm not surprised you didn't connect to the pigs instantly, though, because I didn't either. I mean, partly just it's such an alien experience because for most people in the world, Americans, Canadians, and people all over the world, their experience of pigs comes from one, eating bacon and ham, and two, probably some cartoon or maybe Charlotte's Web, a book that they read.
Yeah.
And they don't realize for me, the biggest thing was just how large the pig was. I was just stunned by how large the first farm pig was because I legitimately sort of feared for my own safety because the pig, I think the first pig I met was at Sasha Farm in Michigan, and this 800-pound boar comes running towards me because I think he thought I had some food or something. And you see an 800-pound animal. I mean, so the largest human beings and the most dangerous and athletic human beings in the United States are these NFL linemen. They're 300 pounds. A farm pig is almost 3 times as large as the largest sumo wrestler or NFL lineman you could possibly imagine.
That really puts it in context.
No, it was a little shocking to me because I was expecting little Charlotte's Web, like a little baby pig running up to me. But instead it's this huge monster. But then the moment you start interacting with them and get over your fears and your concerns, you realize, oh gosh, this is like a puppy. I mean, they are really like puppies.
But as long as you have respect for the, just in case you have like an apple in your hand or something.
Yeah.
Don't do that.
But my experience is they're amazingly good. I don't think I've definitely been bitten by pigs. Usually because you've got an apple in your hand, but I've never had even my skin broken by a pig bite. I don't know. Have you had?
No, I haven't. And we went to meet Esther the Wonder Pig in her home before she was, into the sanctuary. And we took some watermelon because, they told us that she liked watermelon. And I couldn't believe how gentle she was when I took a piece of watermelon and, put it towards her. And she just kind of so gentle with her lips.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that different from dogs. Dogs can usually figure out the difference between your finger and the food, and they don't want to hurt you. And pigs are the same. They're like big, giant puppies.
Treated well, they're just the best, really are.
Yeah. You used a term earlier that some people in the audience might not know, which is gestation crate. And that's the image I was talking about earlier of you sitting inside this pig farm that you were charged and convicted for doing a nonviolent sit-in. You were sitting right in front of a gestation crate. So can you share more about what a gestation crate is and what you saw on that day that led you to decide to sit there and try to attract attention to what was happening to these poor mother pigs?
Absolutely. Well, if you imagine a dog crate, but made of, big steel bars, And then if you imagine like a big hay barn, but the place is full of dog crates, full of gestation crates, and each pig is living there and not able, literally not able to move around. They don't go out to poop, they don't go out to pee, everything happens in that crate, that gestation crate. And the gestation crate, it's mainly for mother pigs. You know, they stay there while they're made pregnant. They get forcibly impregnated, usually via a syringe, and usually via, you know, a male will go past all the mother pigs. He's caged too. And it's just horrendous. The first time I saw inside one of these big white barns, which is where they're housed, you know, in the rolling green fields in the countryside, you see a big white shed. You go inside and it's just, oh my God, the sounds, the smells. And there's hundreds of these pigs in gestation crates right next to each other.
Yeah.
It's you know, you get flashbacks. You just want to go and you want to release them all. Yeah, I get flashbacks all the time of you know, the misery.
Yeah. Do you know Ian Duncan at the University of, how do you pronounce Guelph? Guelph?
Yep,
Is it
Guelph?
Guelph?
Yeah.
That's the first time I've actually ever said that word. I've read that word, but it's a university in Canada that's very famous for its animal science program. And Ian Duncan's a professor there. He described gestation crates as the cruelest form of torment humankind has ever invented. And we were just talking about how large these animals are, you know, these 800-pound animals that are almost as big as 3 linemen. A gestation crate, a spacious gestation crate, they're less spacious and more spacious gestation crates. A spacious gestation crate is a 2-foot by 7-foot box. That is 14 square feet. So, you know, 3 square feet, you know, 3 feet is about half the height of a normal human being.
Right.
And you turn that into a square. That is the amount of space that a 800-pound animal receives her entire life.
Yep.
So imagine stuffing 3 NFL linemen into the space of basically a bathtub and forcing them to live that way their entire lives. And you basically get what a gestation crate is.
Yeah. And you know
and there's
what?
all sorts of problems associated with it. Most notably, just psychological torment. You know, they go completely insane inside these places.
And sometimes, you know, the pigs that I was sitting in front of in Quebec, you know, one of them didn't like their neighbor. You can't get away. You've got someone bullying you from the side. You can't get away.
Yeah.
And the only time
what did you see? How did you know that she didn't like her neighbor?
I could see we were there for like a couple of hours, and one of them was like almost attacking the other, and she was trying to pull back and she couldn't.
She couldn't. Yeah, you can't escape.
And the only time they're let out is when they're made pregnant, and then they're taken to a slightly larger area. And then they're made pregnant, they get the babies taken away, and then they're led back into that gestation crate.
Yeah, one of the most disturbing things I ever heard about pig farming, which I'm trying to remember who made this comment. And, oh man, I don't remember who it is. I think it's a direct action of our activist, but mother pigs get let out of their cage maybe 5 to 10 times in their lives.
Right.
And they get out to give birth, to have their babies taken from them, and then they'll walk out one more time before they're sent to slaughter.
Exactly.
So they are freed only so their children can be stolen from them. Every single time they walk out, that's the only reason they're taken out. And then one final time before they're killed.
Yeah. And that's the only time they see daylight.
Yeah. That's the only time they see daylight. It's the only time they get to move around, stretch their limbs. Because these crates are so small, they can't even turn around. I mean, they can barely even turn their heads, which is why I think the statistic is there was this study done by animal scientists who work for the industry who found that when they're observing one gestation crate facility, I believe it was for an hour, and they observed 80% of the pigs exhibiting stereotypic behavior. And stereotypic behavior is basically when the psychological stress you're enduring has gotten so bad that you engage in some abnormal behavior. So some human beings suffer this in jail. Like they'll have some weird nervous tick. They'll just keep bobbing their heads. And if you I mean, on the streets of San Francisco, you see lots of weird stereotypic behavior because people are broken. You know, they're on drugs, they're homeless, they're facing stresses that you and I can only imagine, and it breaks them.
Mm-hmm.
But 80% of these mother pigs in 1 hour, not over a day, not over a week, in an hour, are exhibiting stereotypic behavior. And so you can understand why people want to expose it. Tell me more about kind of like what you knew about the farm beforehand and just what actually happened on that day.
Yeah. So I think we knew that some activists had gone into this particular place beforehand, and they really knew that it needed exposing.
Mm-hmm.
So we all gathered in the early hours in the dark, I don't know, something like 3 a.m. when there's no workers inside, you know. We'll put on our biosecurity suits. We had booties, we had gloves, we had, you know, hood, because we're a lot of times activists accused of bringing disease into places, and we obviously don't. We're aware. So we were dressed in white biohazard suits, and we had our Rose's Law T-shirt on, and then a little convoy of cars. 3 a.m. We entered the facility, and then from there we started live streaming.
And the door was just unlocked?
The door was unlocked. I've never, I mean, I've been into a few places. Some I've not made public and others. And I've never had to break anything, you know, physically smash anything to get inside.
Yeah, same with me.
Right.
I've been in dozens and dozens of farms and labs, you know, and even in Yuling, China, and even Ridgeland. I mean, we just always found a door. It's one of the bizarre things that I always tell people that obstacles to rescue and open rescue are mostly psychological, because we see these imposing, terrifying places where there's so much violence and suffering. And we think to ourselves, oh, how could I possibly ever do that? I can't do that. But physically, the act of doing it just isn't that difficult. You know, the doors are usually unlocked. There's usually not anyone there, especially if you go after hours. I mean, you went at 3 a.m., but frankly, usually if you just go at 6 p.m., because the workers get there really early and they leave pretty early. I mean, most farms will have their last shift at maybe like 3 p.m., 4 p.m.
Right.
And then they'll go home for the night. So even if you show up like, tell your boss, I'm going to take an early day and just go off to a pig farm, the odds are you're going to be able to get in and no one's even going to know. I had some experience in North Carolina. So we did a lot of investigations of Smithfield, and we had an employee's family member tell us that Smithfield was lying about gestation crates, because a lot of companies, did this company you investigated in Quebec, were they publicly admitting they were using gestation crates, or were they lying about it?
The only thing I saw about the family was one of them went to a school and did a presentation at school to the school kids. But
and did they admit that they were using gestation crates?
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay. Well, Smithfield had told the world they had stopped using these crates because every time people see this, they revolt against it. You know, because again, as Ian Duncan put it, this is the cruelest form of confinement humankind has ever invented.
Right.
You know, to force this mother to live in a essentially metal tomb her entire life and let her outside to walk 5 times, maybe in her life, and every time only so you can steal her babies. And that's pretty ungodly evil. But so a lot of companies actually say they don't have them. And Smithfield, the largest pork production company in the world, which we've investigated both in North Carolina and Utah. Actually, we've investigated them in California too. They claimed we stopped using them. And the way we found out, do you know this story?
Go ahead.
It was an employee. It was an employee who kept telling his family, you know, Smithfield keeps saying they're not using these. I'm going to work every day. We still have them. They're everywhere. Wow. In fact, every one of the pigs is in a gestation crate. And should I do something about this? This is a little concerning to me. And obviously the guy doesn't do it because he works there and he doesn't want to get in trouble. But one of his family members tells me, yeah, every one of their pigs is in gestation crates. And I was like, how do you know? It's like, well, my family member told me, but then I just walked in myself. She just said she just walked in one afternoon, opened up the door, and saw a bunch of mother pigs in gestation crates. And I was like, wait, you just walked in? She was like, yeah, I wanted to see. And I was like, were you concerned about trespass or anything? No, there was nobody there. And I know where my brother works or my family member.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just walked in. And when I went out there with them, it was so funny because here I am, this animal rights activist and lawyer, so cautious and thinking we need to have a legal opinion and do a legal analysis and
Right.
justify our actions before we do it. And she and her friend, when I go there for the first time and she wants to show me, she was like, oh, let's just walk in. And this is like 4 p.m. in bright daylight. And they just walk in. And no one knows. No one does anything. And I'm just thinking, why are we taking all these precautions and getting all these legal opinions? She just walked in broad daylight and took a bunch of photos of her iPhone.
Whoa, that's, yeah.
It's pretty wild.
Blow mind.
Well, I mean, the reality is, especially these large scale facilities, and I know the place you guys went to in Quebec was a large scale facility. They have so few employees supervising the facility.
Ridiculous.
Right? So they can't really stop you even if they wanted to. So at Smithfield largest pig farm, Circle 4 Farms, they have 80 different sites with 1.2 million pigs processed every year. And I think the number is something like 80 total employees. There's like one employee for like 100,000 animals or something like that, or not 100. It's probably like 50,000. But you know, there's just no chance they can actually supervise that many animals. And so they're really just kind of, they're there to make sure the building doesn't burn down, and that's about it. And that's one of the most horrific things about it, because when you trap thousands of mother pigs in crates, when one gets sick, when one's injured, one's getting bullied, if you got an employee whose only really supervisory responsibility is I check in, make sure the feeders and waters are working, and make sure the building doesn't burn down, he is never going to find a serious injury or disease, even one that's gruesome. And you've seen that so many times. I know you've seen that firsthand so many times, animals with just the most grotesque injuries imaginable.
Yes.
It's a vile system.
It really is.
So tell.
And I love, you've been able to explain this in court yourself, haven't you?
Yeah.
I mean, I watched the court cases where you were representing and where you won the case, and how you were able to describe, you know, the lack of vet care and the fact that they were worth basically nothing, the babies. Yeah.
No, that same company, Smithfield, do you know how many vets they had for 1.2 million pigs?
2?
1.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
No,
it's like, I think we did the calculation, and I think if this vet never slept, I don't remember the exact number, but I think it was something like, if this vet never slept and worked 365 days a year, he would be treating a pig every 3 seconds and spending 3 seconds with each pig, something like that. It was just wild. It was unbelievable how ridiculous it was. So,
well, our defense in the Pig Trial 4 case had the vet on the stand, and it was awful. He had no empathy towards the pigs. It was all about herd health. So his concern was nothing about individuals.
So this is the company's veterinarian.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there an effective cross-examination? Did they point out that they weren't giving appropriate care to the animals?
Yes. And we actually had one of the workers on the stand too. And it was so interesting because he was on his own in the place, it seems, a lot of times. And they were trying to get other workers. He was from Ghana, and they were trying to get another worker flown in. So you've got really disadvantaged people working in a place like that with no concern for what they were breathing in, for what they were stepping in, you know, for the fact that, you know, the place could go on fire at any moment because there was cobwebs like 2 foot long hanging from the ceiling. So we talk about
the place is falling apart.
Right. And we talk about vet care for the animals, and, you know, personally, I care about humans as well, about the workers. The whole model that the industry has come up with is just wrong.
Why did they need to fly the guy in for the court case?
I doubt that
was
they
he
could
back in Ghana?
Yeah, the guy was from Ghana. He was a French-speaking Ghanaian who was.
Okay, so he just worked temporarily at this farm and then flew back to Ghana.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe he was trying to get permanent residence, and he'd come across. I don't know. That part of it wasn't questioned, but I think the point is that they'd be totally embarrassed if they had any locals working in a place like that.
Yeah. Nobody ever wants to work in these places, which is why they fly in these migrant workers.
Yeah.
And Smithfield at Circle 4 Farms, they literally flew in slaves. Just not an exaggeration. You've heard the story, right? Do you know about Global Horizons?
No.
So Smithfield hired this contracting company, and they always do this sort of thing to basically have plausible deniability, so they can say, "Oh, we didn't do it; it was a contractor who did it." But I mean, no one wants to work in these places because they stink. They're full of disease. Like methicillin resistance is endemic, so there's these staph infections that get everywhere. I'm sure you saw these infections. You saw pigs with skin infections, like greasy pig disease, that sort of thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I've been next to pigs who are coughing like crazy. Like, what are they coming down with? It's frightening.
Yeah, their skin is infected with all this bacteria, most commonly staph. And actually, incidentally, there was a research report released fairly recently showing that I think the figure is 97% of the staph, which is a bacterial infection, is resistant to penicillin. And I think it was like 70% was resistant to some secondary antibiotic. But penicillin, I mean, it's kind of an important antibiotic. We don't want all these bugs going around that we can't treat with penicillin. And they found because they're constantly giving these animals antibiotics, like 70% of all the antibiotics in the United States are being fed to farm animals to prevent them from dying in these filthy conditions, that all the bacteria are now resistant to it. But yeah, so anyways, I was just going to say that the one of the many problems of pig farms is that the rate of staph infections in the surrounding community, not just the workers, even just regular community members. If you just live near a pig farm, so sorry, Jeremy, Jeremy, one of our staff members, lives in North Carolina, and there's a lot of pig farms in North Carolina. Your rate of staph is 3 times higher. There was a study done by, I think, the University of Iowa showing that people who just live near, you don't have to work near, because the problem is, some worker brings home staph, it gets on the kid goes to school or is in gym class with another kid. And MRSA infections are deadly. There are tens of thousands of people who die from MRSA infections. MRSA is a form of staph that's resistant to methicillin.
That is terrifying. That really is.
So it's absolutely terrifying. Yeah. So, but the point is, I mean, who's going to want to live in this basically evil laboratory where they're intentionally or unintentionally breeding superbugs? So they have to haul in these people from outside of the country to work in these places. And in Circle 4, the wages were so bad and the conditions were so bad, they literally enslaved people in Asia. So they went to these people in Southeast Asia. I think they were like Chinese, Thai, Vietnamese. And they hired this company, Global Horizons. I think Global Horizons is the name of the company. And they basically convinced these poor people in Thailand who have no hope. Their country is, very poor. And they say, look, you've got no hope here. You've got kids who can't eat. Sign over the deed to your home as collateral, and we'll ship you over to the United States. We'll cover all your costs. We'll get your visa, and your income will instantly be like 10x what it was in Thailand because the dollar is so strong in Asia. So a dollar goes a long way. And these people just sign these contracts to give their homes away. They come to this country, and this is all documented. You can go read about it. And the company just decided, you know what? Now that you're here and you're completely powerless and you're dependent on us for everything, you don't even speak the language, we're just not going to pay you. And if you tell anyone we're not going to pay you, we're going to take your homes away because we have the deed to your home now back in Thailand. Your kids will be on the street. And there's a great article about, it's called A Modern Tale of Slavery. And it's published by a very conservative periodical. It's called the Deseret News. It's actually the Mormon Church's official publication. The Mormon Church has a lot of influence in Utah. And normally they're not, I mean, this is a very right-wing publication. They don't normally do exposés of big corporations, especially big corporations that are doing a lot of business in Utah.
Sure.
But they did an expose of this. And it's just, and one of the most disturbing things about all this is how can you're probably thinking, man, I'm sure a lot of people went to jail for this. You know how many people went to jail for enslaving human beings in southern Utah?
Oh, no. One?
0.
Oh.
No one went to jail. They tried to put us in jail for rescuing piglets, and they didn't put anyone in jail, or even, if I recall correctly, I don't think they even charged anyone for literally enslaving people. This is how disgusting this industry is. And this is why people are doing things like sit-ins at pig farms, because you have a company that is torturing animals in these medieval implements of suffering, enslaving human beings, spreading diseases everywhere, and they charge you and me instead of the company.
It doesn't make... exactly. Like, what's going on? What's going on?
It honestly, it sometimes does make you laugh. It feels like, I actually haven't seen the movie, but have you heard of this movie, Idiocracy?
No. What
Okay.
is it?
I've heard good things about it. It's just about how, what happens if the world's controlled by idiots, like 30, 40 years from now. Assume all the intelligent people have died off and the only people left are complete dunces and idiots. What happens to the world?
Dear.
Oftentimes
Probably
when I look at
improves.
how our food system is being managed, it feels like idiocracy has come to life. It's just nothing makes sense. Up is down, left is right. You know, the things people are doing to enslave human beings and make human beings sick are totally fine. And the things you did just to, for example, try and help a baby pig who's sick and dying are crime. You know, it's ridiculous. So I went off on a little tangent, but let's go back to what happened in Quebec. So you get there at 3 a.m. You sit there. What happens? I mean, do the employees come in and scream at you? Do they shout? Do they call the police?
Yeah, the employer came in. Well, actually, the worker came in, I think, first. We heard this in court. And he phones his boss and says, the vegans are here. That's how he described us.
Really?
Yeah.
So did you talk to him? Did you see him come in?
No, I didn't actually see the worker at all. And then he called the family, and then the son came. And, you know, we actually didn't see it, but he let out one of the big boars.
Wow. Just to intimidate you?
Yeah, within the area that we were in. And we were sitting on the ground, and then next minute there's this great big massive boar coming at us. Thankfully, you know, we didn't move. We weren't afraid, so it was fine. But you know, in court, we were the ones accused. We were accused of all sorts of false accusations. It was crazy. Of letting out the boar, of sabotaging a generator. Yeah. So eventually, so you know, the worker...
they let a boar out, basically hoping he would attack you or scare you off.
Yeah.
What did the boar do?
He kind of walked past us,
just sniffing around.
Right, just sniffing around. And then he went to the end.
The poor guy, he probably never got out of his cage. That was probably his one day out of his cage.
Well, you know, they use the boars to walk past the females. I don't know how often they do it.
Yeah.
To see how excited the females are. And then they'll do the artificial insemination.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. So then the family asked us to leave, and no. And then they called the police, and quite a few police cars showed up. And then.
So can you tell me about the interaction, your first interaction with the employee? I'm really curious about what happened when you said it was one of the owners who came to you. This is a family that owns the company? And so who was it that actually came up to you? Was it a guy? Was it a woman?
Yeah, it was a guy.
An older dude?
Yeah, it was a guy who came up, and he looks completely confused, and he's speaking in pretty much French. So a lot of times, you know, they might be like talking at us, and I'm just like, non, nous sommes not quitting, or whatever, you know, I would say French.
How's your French, Jenny?
You know, high school French, not really practiced since.
But a lot of the other activists obviously spoke French.
Yeah. But a lot of the other activists, you know, there was... some spoke French really well and would, you know, converse with the worker. But then when the police came, I was pretty much the police liaison.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what were they saying to each other? I mean, what do you recall what your actors were saying and how the owner was responding?
Well, it got a little bit heated, I think, at times. I mean, he was kind of shouting. I think at one time he maybe kicked our feet or something, and trying to really, you know, make us, you know, threatened, you know, feel threatened, and we didn't. I mean, we're just calmly sitting there. We're not shouting at anyone. We're just calmly asking for our demands to be met, you know, for the media to be let inside and to see what we were seeing, and for, you know, a message to get through to the government of the province, asking for an animal bill of rights. That was our demand. You know, it's kind of important to me that we weren't just sitting there waiting to get arrested. We had demands. We wanted to bring awareness to the animals. So then eventually the police were called. And the interesting thing is, that everyone talks about biosecurity. I didn't see the police donning any protective gear. There was no washing facility for shoes to be washed. They just walked right in. And it was really kind of cool seeing the police reaction, because you could see that they felt uncomfortable. They're in the same room as hundreds of pigs. They would have never seen anything like this before. They would have seen like Happy Pig adverts on the TV and Happy Pig adverts, at butcher stores. And here they are in a massive room full of suffering animals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something really fascinating about that first confrontation with, the workers are one story, because they're all more or less inoculated to the suffering because they come in, they see it every day. And human beings have an extraordinary ability to turn off their empathy when it's normalized, when they think this is just part of my job. But the officers are not in that same position. They don't come into a pig farm every day and watch mother pigs smashing their heads against the metal bars, screaming to be let out.
Right.
And I've had some pretty fascinating experiences too. So the first daylight open rescue we did, we walked into a slaughterhouse in Chinatown in San Francisco. It was all Chinese people who walked in. And we walked out, and I was carrying a hen who had this massive lesion on her eye and just inflamed and was just struggling to walk. And I didn't actually even walk out because the cops had arrived by the time we started taking these chickens out. I actually just brought the chicken to the officer, right? Technically an act of stealing, and told him, this chicken needs some help. I'm taking her out. And he was like, all right. And he was a co-conspirator essentially. And this is one of the reasons why I just think these criminal charges against us are so bogus, because even the officers who arrest us, in my experience, often assist us. Even at Sunrise, the very action in Sonoma County that I think you were there that day, right? Were you there in 2018?
Yeah.
At Sunrise?
Yeah.
You were there. Are you not supposed to say that?
No, that's fine. Yeah, I'm totally open as to what I've done in the past. Yeah.
Okay. So, but if you recall, Sergeant Thompson, I showed him, there's actually kind of a ridiculous interaction with him, because I first showed him a bird, and he says, I said, these animals are dead and dying. These animals need immediate care. And I'm showing him a bird who's partially cannibalized, and her prolapse has been torn open. You can see her internal organs coming inside out. And he says, oh yeah, I want a vet to take a look at that bird. And I say, oh, she's already dead, Sergeant Thompson. It was just ridiculous. But, and then he's basically leading us out into saying, okay, yeah, go this way. And yeah, we're going to get these animals some care. And one of the arguments I tried to make at trial, which they didn't let me make, was, look, if I'm a conspirator who's engaged in burglary and theft, then so is the sergeant and supervisor who's running the show for the cops, because he said the same thing I did. And
amazing.
I don't. Did you see any of the cops when you were at Port Greg? Did any of them? Or I shouldn't say that. Or I guess you can't say that, but I can. Did any of the cops? Were they responding in a way that made you think they understood why you were there, or were they just stoned? Really?
No, absolutely. They were chatting amongst themselves, but then every so often you'd see them glance towards the crates, and I don't think they could quite believe what they were seeing. Yeah. I'm actually looking at a photo right now. This is it's the profile photo for the Pig Trial 4 on Facebook. And yeah, the look on this cop's face, they do not look like they're happy to be here. And because the place is just filthy, you can see cobwebs rusting everywhere. These mother pigs are trapped in metal bars. Yeah. Even the term crate, it's not a crate. It's a tomb, or it's almost like this evil gauntlet, because it's got these bars. It's almost like they're grabbing this living being and holding her in this space with a metal grip. And you have this cop standing in front of these gestation crates with you, and you're staring at the pig, and this cop is just looking forward and just has an extremely unhappy look on their face. Yeah. And how can you not feel that way? Yeah. So what did the cops say specifically? They said, they told you had to leave? Did they let the media in? Yeah. No. a few times that, well, they were kind of, radioing, asking for advice from their supervisors, but they wanted us to leave, and we basically wouldn't. It's like, so it was a back and forth, a negotiation. And then eventually they decided, okay, this has gone on long enough, and they started to take us out one by one. And some of us, it's interesting, you don't know how you're going to react sometimes. Like some of us just kind of stood up and walked out. Others needed to be carried out. I didn't know what my reaction was going to be until the very end. I was the last one out. And then in the end, I just didn't want to leave. I really didn't want to leave because we hadn't had our demands met.
Yeah.
And I haven't really said this publicly, but it took 4 of them, like one of my carrying me out, each arm, each leg. And I was screaming on the way out, it's not food, it's violence.
Wow.
And it just felt awful.
Sure.
And some of us were released right there. We had a green team on the outside. They were released right there. 2 of us were taken to the police station. One of us was from the United States. And when they looked at my record, they just seemed to want to take me to the police station and see about if I needed to be, I don't know, jailed or something. It was ridiculous.
Did you have any active warrants then? Because probably not, right? Because you had already, all your cases had been resolved by that point.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because you had been previously tried. And I remember this because I was deeply involved in this case.
Yes,
in the media around it.
Yeah.
And the charges were dismissed shortly before the trial, and it was a huge victory. Because the Toronto Star wrote this amazing piece. I'm trying to remember the name of the piece, but it was a very prominent columnist. Do you remember the name of the article?
Yeah. David Walcombe was the columnist. He's a beautifully established reporter, and he writes really good opinion pieces. He's like a renowned reporter in Canada. And then it was funny. Another reporter took offense to his article, and then a follow-up piece came out from this other reporter, and she basically likened us to terrorists, to the Baader Meinhof gang, who actually killed people with a machine gun. So it was an interesting reaction back in, that was like 2019, 2018.
Yeah, it's May 2019. I just found the article.
Right. And when you're saying that, that you've been inside a few times and, no one knew any of the wiser into farms, likewise, you were amazing helping us put together an investigation into the other pig farm in Ontario. It was our first time going inside, and we thought, great, we've done it. We've rescued 2. And you're like, no, you have to go build a proper investigation, find documents. And we did that.
I do remember this. you went in and you just grabbed 2 piglets, and I said, this is great, but you got to do some more work. I didn't say you had to. I thought it was strategically advantageous for the movement for you to do a more continuous investigation. And you ended up getting some of the most powerful photos and video I've ever seen. I mean, the prolapse footage from that pig farm, it's just so incredibly disturbing.
Well, it was a female pig, and she was pregnant, and she was kept in a separate cold room, and she had this massive prolapse from her behind, and it was, the blood was just caked on the walls and caked amongst piles.
Can you say what a prolapse is for people who don't know what that is? Just what are you saying? Describe what it is.
It's it can be part of the body is basically coming out of the anus, and it was like yay big and bloody, and it would have been extremely painful for that poor pig. It's just nasty, and she was going to be kept for full term until her babies were big enough, and then slash and grab is something in the industry where her belly is cut open, her babies would have been taken out, and then she would have been killed.
Yeah.
at the factory, at the farm where she was.
I don't even remember if it was an anal or vaginal prolapse. Do you remember which one it was?
Well, that's the thing. I'm not sure. I think it was an anal prolapse. That's the thing. I mean, I don't even I stood in front of her and I narrated what I was seeing. And for a while, I didn't even want to share that myself. DXC
it was so disturbing.
Fantastic videos of a lot of the footage that we'd taken inside there. And it felt so wrong to even be there and witnessing.
Yeah.
It's just disgusting. Some of the stuff is just fully disgusting that you get to witness. Yeah. And the empathy that you feel.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, there's some moments inside these places where, I mean, this has happened to me many times, where it's hard to believe it's real. It just feels surreal that this has to be some nightmare. This can't be real. And yeah, I mean, so I looked at some of the footage before we had this conversation, and it's got to be the size of a watermelon. This prolapse is an internal organ that's being pushed out. And it's interesting. I don't know if you know this, but prolapses are increasingly one of the number one causes of death in pig farms.
Really?
Yeah. So for the last 10 to 15 years, more and more mother pigs are developing prolapses, and the death rate, I think the most recent statistic in the United States is something like 13% of the mother pigs will die every year. And the most common cause is now prolapsing. And you know why they think it's prolapsing? This is industry reports.
Okay. Go.
It's because of litter size, because they're genetically engineering and selectively breeding the mother pigs to have more and more babies and to have them more quickly.
Mm-hmm.
A generation ago, a mother pig might give birth to like 15 babies a year, which is a lot. Like 15 babies. I mean, that's not an easy load, 15. And now it's well over 20. I mean, it's sometimes 25, 26, 27. Because these animals are used like machines. And when you're constantly pumping babies out of these poor mothers' reproductive tracts, it's putting pressure on their anal cavity and their retinal and their vaginal cavity. And eventually it just literally the stress and the damage and the reproductive wear and tear causes the organ to come inside out. It gets bloody and torn up and rotten. And yeah, the video footage is so disturbing, not just because the prolapse itself is so vile. I mean, you kind of can't even look at it. It's just, and it's the only thing I can compare it to is, have you seen the Alien movies?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, so the Alien movies are these chest bursting aliens that implant an egg in a human being, and then it bursts out, and your body basically bursts open with this alien creature. A prolapse looks a lot like that. It's like, and I can only imagine what slash and grab looks like, because this slash and grab, I mean, and the notion that this poor mother pig, you can see in the video footage, she's suffering immensely already. Mm-hmm. She's in constant horrific pain. I mean, because her internal organs are being ripped out from the inside. They're coming out. They're already out of her body. They're partially out of her body. And she's just sitting there dejected, like a machine, incubating these babies. So some evil corporation, in that case, I think it was a company called Dare,
that's right. Yeah.
wants to steal her babies and kill all her babies, kill her, slash and grab, slash her body open. I mean, it's just, even the idea that slash and grab happens. I mean, that doesn't even happen in torture scenarios. I mean, when you talk about the most evil people in history, like the Nazis didn't do these sorts of things, right? And pig farmers are doing them all the time. All the time. And if you're merely being there and observing it and documenting and live streaming it and asking for the public to be able to find out about these things, you're the one who's charged and convicted. I mean, it's completely absurd and backwards.
And I think
I will say that prior case, it was incredibly disturbing, and really disturbing how the SPCA responded, because I know you reached out to the RSPCA and gave them all the evidence.
Oh, absolutely.
And they have some supervisory authority of these pigs, and they did absolutely nothing. They did nothing about this.
Well, we think that my reporting them to the authorities was the thing that caused the police to then start knowing, and following and surveilling, and then eventually
raiding your home.
Yeah. I was put in handcuffs. When it was dark, had police banging on the windows, waking us up, and then grabbing me and putting me in handcuffs outside.
Yeah.
And all for, compassionately trying to expose the horror that's going on in these places. And again, not just for not just for the animals, but when you talk about, the breeding and the number of births, another horror story, which I've never really wanted to even, show, is the number of babies that are dead born, stillborn. And then, you see them kind of lying mixed in with all the poop from the mother, and the blood and the placenta and dead piglets everywhere. And that's the other thing that, it's just like, it turns your stomach when you think back to what you've witnessed and to what the workers then to go in and clean away and throw out.
Isn't it mind-blowing that people actually voluntarily eat this shit?
Oh.
I mean, it's like, I can't, even if you just didn't give a damn about the animals, just seeing a pile of placental blood, feces, dead and decaying animals in the exact crate where these animals are being raised that you will one day eat after they're dosed with antibiotics their entire lives and all sorts of other carcinogenic substances.
Yep.
And you gladly go to McDonald's and have, bacon cheeseburger with that in it. I mean, it's mind-blowing to me. And one of the reasons why they're having so many deaths in the nursery and so many prolapses is because the genetic engineering of the piglets has gotten to the point where for a typical mother pig that has 12 teats, they are now often genetically engineering mother pigs so that the average mother pig will have 13 or 14 piglets.
Right.
And that's the reason that's really important is because each of the piglets claims one teat. And so if you have 14 piglets and there's only 12 teats, you're basically asking at least two of the piglets to either fight for her life, fight to the death if necessary, or starve to death.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, the number one cause of death, the two largest causes of death in these farrowing crate facilities for the baby pigs, and we talked about 14% of the mothers die. Well, for the piglets, even worse. The most recent statistics show it's over 20% of the piglets die. And this is not the stillborn piglets. These are the live piglets. And the two most important causes of death are starvation and crushing.
Oh, yeah.
So we found this industry manual a couple years ago. I don't know if you heard about the starvation, crushing, hypothermia complex.
No.
So this is an
I've kind of
industry
seen
document.
I've seen it IRL in real life.
Yeah, this is an industry document where they're talking about, but they don't care about the fact that you have these little babies, just like puppies who are being crushed to death or starving to death and hypothermia. They care because they're losing some money, so there's this triangle in an industry document I could share with you that talks about, here we have to deal with the triad of starvation, hypothermia, and crushing. And it's like, what is this? This is how our food's produced? This is a horror movie. This is a common production concept in pig farms, the starvation, crushing, hypothermia complex. And the reason it's a triangle is because they all relate to each other. When a pig is hypothermic, the pig doesn't have the energy to get the food and fight for a teat and get the food. When they're starving to death, they're more likely to be crushed because they can't get away. If they're smashed by a horde of other piglets and suffocating them, they just can't get away.
Yeah.
And if they're getting crushed, they might have an injury that makes it more likely they'll freeze or they'll die of starvation. And so it's this vicious cycle of starvation, crushing, and hypothermia, and it's so evil. But just the fact that these scientists would design pigs and genetically engineer and selectively breed them, and I've taken lots of photos inside pig farms where they'll literally list out the number of teats and the number of live pigs.
Wow.
And I remember in North Carolina, it was like every one of the cards, there were more live pigs than there were teats. And lo and behold, what happens? You see piglets who are starved to death. You see mother pigs who are literally being flayed alive because the piglets are fighting for the teats. Because normally, in a normal situation, each piglet will claim one teat and that is their teat. That's the way pigs have evolved for hundreds of thousands of years. They give birth and each of their piglets claims one teat. And if you give birth to 14 piglets and there's only 12 teats, the piglets fight for a teat. And what happens to the mother's teat at that point? Well, it gets shredded into 1,000 pieces. I mean, it's like some sort of vampire octopus that's like all bloody and scattered. And the piglets, and that makes it even worse because now that teat is not intact. And so one of the things you'll see on the cards, I don't know if you ever saw these in Canada, but they'll list the number of intact teats. And you might wonder, wait, why do you need a number of intact teats? Well, it's because they kind of need to know because they'll often just kill some of the piglets and say like, all right, this mom only has 11 intact teats. This mom just gave birth to 14. So let's just crush the 2 smallest ones right now. Let's just smash their heads on the concrete because we know she only has 11 teats and we don't want her to go down to 10. And if we have 14 piglets and 11 intact teats, there's going to be fighting. They're going to destroy one of the teats. And it is extraordinarily painful for the moms. We've shot video footage of the piglets trying to nurse off these shredded teats where the mom's just like constantly going, Yeah. You can see her just shrieking in pain. And you you don't have any kids, right, Jenny?
No.
I'm sure you have friends who've had kids. And all the moms I've talked to say when there's an injury on your teat, even from one baby, much less 14, it is so painful. It is like one of the most painful things any woman can go through to have this. And you want to help them. This is your little baby. But when you've got a wound, I mean, and sometimes, a human mother has 2 sources of milk, right? There's two available places where the baby can be placed. For each of these piglets, there's less than one. And the idea that you have multiple babies fighting for that food source that is part of your body.
Yeah.
Ooh. So if people on this video are courageous, search prolapse direct action everywhere or shredded teat direct action everywhere, and you will see it. And I've seen it in every single pig farm. Every pig farm I've been into, I've seen prolapses and I've seen shredded teats. And this is just the reality of the way bacon is produced, and people do not know about it. And it is scandal. Not just that it's happening, but the fact that they lie to so many people about it. Because Smithfield Foods, the biggest company that produces pork in the world, consistently says they believe in freedom from animals, they believe in humane animal care, they care for the animals. That prolapse, I'm pretty sure Adara Pork probably had an internal policy saying they weren't allowed to keep that animal alive and try and steal her babies. Because at that point, when an animal's prolapse like that, almost every corporation in the National Pork Board in the United States will say, you have an ethical requirement just to euthanize this animal. You can treat her, but obviously they're not going to treat her. They're not going to surgically repair the prolapse because that's thousands of dollars. So you actually have an obligation to euthanize this animal, and you're not supposed to use them for production any longer because a baby taken from a mother pig who has a prolapse is going to have infections and disease and all sorts of awful things. Because this mother, I mean, her internal organs are exposed to this incredibly filthy place. That is not going to be a healthy baby.
Well, they're going to take the babies out, aren't they, from the stomach? So,
yeah,
But
it's sick. It's completely sick.
They were still keeping her alive to take the babies out. So they still think that she has commercial value to them.
Yeah, because they were going to get a couple dozen dollars from stealing her babies. So they're like, well, we could still get $100 from this pig. So let's keep her alive while she's suffering, for potentially months, and then let's rip her open, slash her open. When they do slash and grab, do they even use anesthetic? Do you know?
Oh, I don't know. It's the type of thing that
looked it up.
You almost don't want to know too much about because, I mean,
I don't want to say this for sure because I don't want to say something incorrect, but I know I researched this back then when we released this investigation, because a lot of publications wrote about it and wrote about your case too. And we should talk about the happy ending to that case, because we talked about some horrible things, and people should know you saved some piglets and your charges were dismissed, because that was such a huge victory for the movement. But maybe not the last, but one of the last horrible things I'll say is I'm pretty sure I researched slash and grab, and I'm pretty sure they don't even anesthetize the pig. They just rip her open and take her babies out.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, not surprising. They're boiling animals alive. They're slitting their throats. They're ripping them to pieces on the slaughter line when they're fully conscious. So what's one more pig that we just slash open to steal her babies after she suffered for months in this tiny cage? I mean, it's evil. But tell us about the piglets you saved from that facility. You didn't save that mother, obviously, which would have been hard, but I know you wanted to.
I would have loved to get the mothers out, but we were able to take out, with the multiple visits, we took out in total 6 little piglets. And I'm due to visit this summer one of the pairs of piglets.
Oh.
Really looking forward to that. I've received photographic updates. It's like a few hours away from me where they're living now. But it's so special being able to meet the individuals that you've rescued.
Well, tell people about the rescue first before we talk about what they're like now and the happy lives they have. So you walk in this facility, and and you see, I mean, piglets everywhere, right? And how do you decide you want to rescue these animals?
Well, it's very tough. It's extremely tough, like choosing the individuals. Ideally, you look for someone who really needs medical attention.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there were so many piglets that were not, thriving, as the industry might say. They're obviously thin and weak. They're not going to make it. They're going to get thumped and killed by the workers. We actually chose.
Can you say what thumping is?
Thumping is where they take the little baby who's not going to make it. They take them by the legs, they swing them, the head against the floor, the concrete floor, and then they kill them.
And sometimes it takes multiple blows, and the piglet is screaming in agony right in front of her own mother. So the mom watches while her baby's skull is being crushed right in front of her.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So, I mean, we ended up taking a piglet that had a really cabbage ear. We had another piglet that was, it's almost like they had a flu or something, the nose was running. And then other times we'd be presented, the piglets were all taken away and they were in another room. Like hundreds of little baby piglets. And then in that case, you just choose a lucky individual, knowing that you were leaving some behind. And it's kind of, a couple of times we took cat carriers, and the little piglet go inside a cat carrier. And then another time, we came up with a method where we had baby carriers. Material baby carriers that you'd put over your shoulder, and then a little piglet would go inside the baby carrier, and we'd take them out this way. So
I think the photo of you in the Toronto Star, it might be of a piglet being carried that way, because you see this bright little baby and big smile, and she's kind of right in front of you. Is that one of the ones you carried out with a baby carrier?
No, this one was one where I was carrying it out to the people with the baby carriers. So I was just carrying him in my arms. But I was very lucky.
Oh, so he's a he?
Yeah, we had the best photographer with me at the time, and she managed to capture some pictures which are just happy memories. Because there's so many flashbacks that you can have from being in places like this. I remember I went to a hotel one time, and there was a big long corridor in the hotel, and straight away I'm in the pig farm again, down the long corridor where all the rooms went off. But honestly, having a pig, rescuing a pig is one of the best feelings.
Yeah. That is.
As you know.
Yeah,
as you know.
No, it's a beautiful feeling.
Yeah,
but you're right. It's also really hard to leave them behind when you choose the one. It's just, it's such an intense choice, and you make some mistakes sometimes because, I mean, the reason we rescue the ones that are sick is because they're the ones who illustrate the problem the best, and also because, from a legal defense perspective, the legal arguments are strongest. Now, you and I think most of the people watching this would agree. Look, every one of these animals is going to suffer violence. They're all going to be killed.
Right.
And we're talking about dogs, and someone said I'm going to treat this dog well. I'm going to beat him to death. Or I'm going to throw him to a boiling vat of oil at the end of his life. Most would say, well, I'm going to save them all. I'm not going to let you do that to any of them. But because that slaughter is so normalized in our system, we have to identify the ones who are suffering so much. They're a violation of even the industry's own policy, the prolapses, the sicknesses, the infected ears that cause cauliflower or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Sometimes you take it. Sorry,
I'm interrupting you, but I think maybe you were going to that. Sometimes you take someone who looks well, because, I also sometimes I couldn't face taking someone who was so ill. I didn't think there was any chance that
they'd survive. Yeah.
Interventions and having them survive is such a tough decision to make. You're leaving behind these little individuals who are likely going to get killed in a few days because they're not thriving.
Mm-hmm.
So you end up taking an individual that you think has got a chance at life as well.
Yeah. Did you lose any of the 6 that you rescued?
No, we didn't.
Wow. Good job.
Yeah. I made sure that I stayed with them. We had a location where I could be physically with them. And it entailed, really careful feeding and vet visits, and putting noise cancelling headphones on when we were treating little baby and giving injections. And so they received beautiful care. Yeah.
Why did you need noise cancelling headphones? Just because they were shrieking so loudly?
When they were being grasped and they knew that they were going to have an injection from the vet, and a shrieking piglet is quite something to behold.
Yeah. No, it does sound like they're being murdered when you pick them up. Sometimes even picking them up, it sounds like.
Yeah.
One of the most astonishing things for me, though, is I've had the experience too. So when you pick up a piglet and try and give them care, they shriek like you're murdering them.
Yes.
And I mean, you can hear it like 10 miles away. I kid you not. It's a very human-like scream.
Yeah.
But I don't know if you've had this experience, but I think almost all the piglets we removed from factory farms, none of them have made significant noise. Isn't that weird?
On the way out. Really?
Yeah, on the way out. So normally when we get to the sanctuary and pick them up, they scream. It's almost like they know I need to be quiet because this is, I mean, the other explanation is it's just such a different environment and they're not, they're just kind of scared. But honestly, when I've carried piglets out, I haven't gotten the sense they're scared. Even the ones that are really sick and in pain, they don't seem scared. It just seems like they're just curious. They're blown away by this new world and they just don't understand it because their world was just this little metal box. And then they go outside and they see, even in the dark, the air smells fresh.
Yes.
The sky is so high. It doesn't end. They have no concept of the sky and they're looking around just wondering. And so I don't get the sense it's because of fear. I almost get the sense it's just this sense of awe that the world is so much bigger and more beautiful than I thought it was when you're carrying them out. It also, I like to think that they're also conspiring with us. I shouldn't say conspiring. That's such a terrible word, especially since both of us have been convicted of conspiracy. But actually, were you convicted of conspiracy?
Almost.
Almost. Okay. They didn't convict you of conspiracy.
Yeah. We decided to take a deal on that particular charge.
That's right. Okay.
There was a whole story associated with that. But a question, I was looking after these little piglets, and initially they were shy and they didn't really know, what human care was. And I recall the first time, I was feeding them breakfast, and then one of the piglets looks up at me and really makes eye connection, and that's, it stays with you.
It does.
The trust, and they have human eyes. That they really do.
They do.
They have beautiful eyes.
Human eyes. Yeah.
Did you?
They're so close to us. That's why we're using xenotransplantation of pig organs. It's awful.
Yeah.
These kidneys and hearts. It's just, they're so close to us. We can literally take their hearts. We steal their hearts because they're so close to us. And we don't realize how awful it is to steal the heart of a being who's so close to us that we can use their heart.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I've had some weird is not the right word. I've had some pretty interesting experiences with eye contact in pigs too. Oftentimes it involves food because they are very food motivated. But no, one of the most endearing experiences I had, and this is still true to this day. I think Jeremy might have even seen it, but there's a pig I rescued from a factory farm named Daisy. And when she was a little baby, she was so happy when we come to see her that she'd run up to us. And if we put her head down, she'd just like stare at our eyes and nibble at our nose. And very gently, because they have sharp teeth even as babies, but she'd just nibble at our nose and like look at us. It would be really intense eye contact and nibbling. And now she's like a 700-pound pig. She does exactly the same thing.
Oh.
Except her snout is like as big as my head. And so when she's nibbling, it's like there's mud all over my face and my, but it's still very gentle. She just kind of like
lovely.
nibbles at my nose.
Beautiful.
And she stares in my eyes and she's got beautiful eyes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll send you a photo after this of me and Daisy.
Wonderful.
I gave her a little peanut butter sandwich afterwards. So she looks so happy. But I did a little selfie with her, me and her, right after she nibbled on my nose. I think there's some mud on my nose in this photo, but anyways, I'll send it to you.
Okay.
But yeah, the eye contact's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
I didn't even ask you, and the obvious question, which is, why'd you start doing this in the first place? I mean, you knew there was a risk that you would get arrested and charged for all this work. And I think we said this in a prior recording, but I think when most people meet you, certainly when I met you, I wouldn't think, ALF style, Animal Liberation Front direct action activist. I think like the older sister who takes care of everyone, who was my babysitter when I was growing up, who when I come home, she bakes cookies and makes sure and even just your tone of voice, you're such a gentle soul. And yet you're doing these things that are leading the government and the industry to accuse you of terrorism. So, why'd you decide to start doing this in the first place?
Honestly, I've been vegan, getting on for 30 years now. And I think the SAVE movement, lit a fire in me as well for animal rights activism when I met a pig in a slaughter truck, at a pig vigil. So that was kind of the start of the journey way back as, attending vigils for animals and seeing them live, again, making eye contact. And then getting involved in National Animal Rights Day. At that time, we were wanting to display deceased animals in a really respectful way in part of ceremony, memorial ceremony. So that got myself and Carol on. Actually, someone else kind of wanted to start National Animal Rights Day in Toronto. It hadn't happened in Canada. And I became part of that team, and I'm kind of, I don't know, I've got a fire inside me. I wanted to really make that happen. So we started touring farm facilities, and I bought a freezer, and we expected to, simply go and, because there's so many dead animals in these places, as we know. And I expected that we would be, retrieving bodies. And then when we were amongst live animals, one of the team came out from inside one of the rooms, and his face was just tears running down. And he had a little piglet in his arms.
Wow.
And
a living piglet?
A living piglet.
Wow. So this is the first rescue.
That was the first rescue. We couldn't just walk out without having a home for the piglet and having a space to rehab. So we left. We made phone calls. I made phone calls. I have contacts, and once we knew that we had somewhere for the piglet to safely go, I mean, that's so important.
Yeah.
People can't.
I didn't realize this. So the first time you did a rescue was kind of almost accidental. You were there
almost accidental
to basically retrieve some of the because National Animal Rights Day is a demonstration where activists gather in public spaces and show the bodies of animals who are victims of violence. And it was an action that was actually developed by Animal Equality, an incredible group based in Spain many years ago. Yeah. And it spread across the entire world, partly because of the powerful images that were published from Animal Equality's work. And so you were there to retrieve some of the dead animals, and one of your team members just walked into a pig farm and took a baby out.
Yeah, we were all inside the pig farm.
Oh, and we were hunting.
Inside. Wow. We were all inside at that time, and we were retrieving dead bodies.
Dead bodies. Wow.
And then one team member appeared from one of the small rooms. About, I don't know, he was about 20 feet from me at the time, and literally his eyes were streaming. He was crying.
Yeah.
And he had a live piglet, and at that point, no, we just couldn't face not saving someone. Yeah. So then at that point, it became a direct action everywhere, and it became open rescue, and it became an investigation.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Tell us about that feeling of kind of walking out with a piglet in your arms, because you've done it now a few times with many different type species of animal, but what is that like for you?
In a way, I mean, it's liberating. It's the adrenaline is rushing. you've made it in there. You've made it inside, because that's a big stress anyway. Are you going to get inside the place again? And then you actually have an animal with you, and oh my God, are we going to make it out? Are we going to make it to the car? Are the police going to come as we're trying to do this? And then you've made it away from the farm. There's no police chasing you. And then it's such an incredible feeling.
Yeah, it is.
It's like the most difficult operation, making it happen, having a space for the animal, knowing that somewhere is going to take this animal in, and you're going to be providing care. And it survived. It survived going outside. It survived in the car. It's a whole journey, and it's a wonderful feeling when you know that they're safe, and they're not going to be seized by the police, and you've got them to safety. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's the best feeling in the world.
It really is.
I think the antidote to a lot of the pessimism and even just the secondary trauma that activists face from seeing all these things is to actually help. Yeah. There's this distinction in psychology between empathic distress and empathic concern. And empathic distress is when you just feel the suffering of another being and don't respond in any way to try and help them. So you see a homeless person who's going through some sort of mental health crisis. You're in a war zone, and one of your fellow soldiers is shot right in front of you, and you see them slowly suffer and die, and you just cower in fear because you're afraid to go and help them. Or you see a suffering farm animal, or even just on YouTube or on Facebook, and then you have to shut off the computer and just think, I've done nothing to help this animal. That is a paralyzing feeling that it tends to cause people not only to suffer immensely, but also to avoid the problem. It's what causes PTSD. So, it's a trigger now, because now you've had this horrible experience as a trigger. And what's fascinating is when you look at the psychological research, including from war zones, when you can shift empathic distress to empathic concern by taking action to try and help, then people don't suffer from trauma. So if a soldier gets their leg blown off, but you run over and you grab them and you take them to the medic, and sometimes even if you don't succeed, even if you just tried, it turns out when people look at those memories, they don't feel the same sense of trauma and fear and anxiety. They feel pride because they know they tried to help.
Okay.
It's not just that they felt distress, they had concern, they acted on. And this is why I've said before that open rescue gives you superpowers. Like, I feel like after you've done it, and I feel like that's true of you. I mean, I'm sure you were a very brave person before these rescues, but the actions you've taken since started doing open rescue are just so mind-bogglingly brave. And your willingness to go into court and face all these charges is so mind-bogglingly brave. And I think a lot of it does come from this feeling of power you have when you rescue an animal, because you just realize all these doubts I had, all these insecurities, all these fears I had, all the trauma I experienced from watching animals suffer, I can overcome that. And, in my case, most of my early rescue attempts were failures. Like I did not succeed, but just trying. I mean, do you know the story of the first lamb I tried to rescue?
Oh, no, go on. Go ahead.
Okay. It's a terrible story in so many ways, but it's funny. It left me feeling very empowered. So I go to this lamb slaughterhouse in Chicago because my career is falling apart. I'm borderline suicidal. And I think I got to do something before I go out. If I'm going to go out, I might as well do one thing good. And I'd read about slaughterhouses. I'd educated people about slaughterhouses. I'd never been in one. And I said, well, I know there's one mammalian slaughterhouse left in the city of Chicago. I'm going to run in there and grab a lamb. And I think to myself, oh, it's going to be like a little baby, so cute, and it'll be so easy to grab this lamb. I go in there and I don't realize a lamb is a 120-pound animal that is very fast. And they're in the stockyard outside. And I'm like running around in the middle of the night chasing these sheep, and they all run away from me, and I can't catch them because I'm by myself. They're faster than me. And so I'm running around for like 30 minutes, and I can't even get close to one of them and it gets to the point where I feel like, all right, this is unethical. I'm causing them so much fear. I just need to leave. So I didn't even succeed, but I spent 30 minutes running around in a slaughterhouse in the middle of the night, and no one even knew I was there. And I don't remember if it was the first night or the second night, but I think it was within the first 2 nights I was there. An employee saw me there running around, and he didn't do anything.
Oh.
He just said, hey, how you doing? And I'm like, hey, how are you doing? And I just walked out.
What?
But it just shows you when you try to help, even if you don't succeed, you start realizing you have power to make change that no one thinks you have. Even you don't think you have.
Yeah.
And so for me, and obviously like learning and meeting the individuals is so important too. Like my dog isn't here right now. I was checking to see if my dog was in the room with me. My dog is an openly rescued animal from China. He was rescued from a dog meat farm. And just getting to know these animals and seeing them flourish and get back on their feet from the most horrible conditions is also incredibly empowering, because you just realize there is no reason we cannot give every one of these animals this life, every one. And it's so beautiful to see them recover.
It really is. It really is.
So we get more people to do this, Jenny.
Sorry?
No, continue your thought.
No, I mean, rescuing animals. I've been absolutely blessed to rescue lots. I mean, not always from illegal, situations, but I've been blessed to rescue a lot of animals in my time. And, it really is the best feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you one other question about why you did what you did, why you started going to these pig farms and rescuing animals. What do you think is different about you? I mean, because I think you're a beautiful human being and courageous and brave in all these ways. But if I just saw you on the street, I'd say she looks like a pretty ordinary Canadian, or I guess technically you're a Brit, right? You're not actually Canadian?
Bit of both.
Bit of both. Okay. Are your parents half British, half Canadian?
No, 100% British. Yeah.
Okay, you just moved to Canada.
Just moved to Canada. Happen to be a Canadian now.
Okay.
Yeah.
But if I just saw you on the street, I wouldn't think, oh, that's the woman who like bravely charges into pig farms and rescues animals and faces all these terrorism charges. So what do you think was different about your situation or different about you that led you to just go ahead and do it when so many other people are just sitting back and watching and crying? Like, you actually went out there and started saving animals. So what was different about you, or what is different about you or your situation?
Well, I know that I'm inspired. Initially, I'm totally inspired. Like, Jenny Henry created one organization and helped start DXC, and I'm inspired by people who want to make change, and then I really want to help people make things happen. So myself and Carol teamed up and we made, DXC Open Rescue happen. And I don't know, I know that I'm on the right side of history. And I guess I am. I see an opportunity to make something happen, or to disrupt, or to, run inside somewhere like a slaughterhouse and take video and take risks.
You get scared when you do these things?
Not so much, really. Obviously,
even the
adrenaline.
First time?
Sorry?
Even the first time you didn't get scared?
I don't really remember fear. I remember, there's so many moving parts to creating successful rescues or successful campaigns, that it's more about the fear of, are we going to get inside?
Failure.
Is it going to be a success?
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. And then I kind of, one time I went back to Adair and I was completely on my own because I needed to, finish off so I was dropped off there and I was completely on my own.
Why did you need to go back alone?
Well, I needed to retrieve some bodies for a National Animal Rights Day that I was organizing a few years later. I wish I could have taken, and rescued more. But no, I mean, sometimes somehow I don't know what it is. Like I said, I've got a bit of a fire inside me when I know that I need to create an action, do an action. It's like hybrid turkeys we were doing for another organization, Meet the Victims, and all our organizers were arrested. Kind of wild, absolutely wild. And I knew that it needed to continue the action. So, I'm kind of...
So they were arrested before the action even happened?
Before the action, like 2
and
hours.
This is going to be a sit-in at a turkey farm?
yeah, it's going to be a sit-in and maybe an open rescue. I wasn't one of the main organizers, but then that was one of my other arrests in the end for conspiracy.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't think I heard about this one. Was this because there was an infiltrator?
We think there was an infiltrator, but we've never had the name, and I'm not sure that even with discovery, which is all the evidence that the police might put in, we think that maybe that might be redacted.
Wow.
Yeah, but we have.
Is there something like a Freedom of Information Act in Canada that allows you to get public documents or investigative documents?
Yes, but you know what? I found in the last year or so, private companies are being engaged to surveil and investigate activists. And then government employees are not receiving any files. They're logging in to a computer. And the evidence is on the computer, but the computer is owned and the server is owned by this private company. So they're getting around.
It's messed up.
It's messed up. They're getting around the Freedom of Information requests. And they're paying mega bucks, obviously, to have activists like myself, investigated, and activists from around Canada. There's about 6 or 7 activists who were surveilled at great expense, I would think, to taxpayer money. Yeah. And arrested. Yeah. And yet we're the ones, we're treated like terrorists, as you say. And yet we're the ones just trying to expose to the public what the hell is going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the literal definition of fascism. When the state and corporations work together to trample on ordinary people's rights and just use power without any sort of accountability. And we've seen that in the United States too, but that's literally the definition of fascism, that the government should not be able to outsource criminal justice and law enforcement to a third party just to evade scrutiny that they're required to provide to the public as a matter of law. Yeah. And yet they do that all the time. There was a case in Oregon recently where this vivisection facility, Oregon Science and Health University, was contracting out with Information Network Associates, the same company that was surveilling us in the Ridgeland case. Wow. And basically having them do all the investigative work basically for the same reason, so they could evade the U.S. Constitution, which normally, you have a right under the Confrontation Clause of the U.S. Constitution to see the evidence that's being presented against you. You have a right under a Supreme Court case called U.S. versus Brady to receive any exculpatory evidence, but that only applies to evidence in the government's hands. And so they put it in some corporate vault, and in some cases, literally, it's like a physical vault that the corporation seals off and hides away the evidence. Then the government says, "Sorry, we don't know." So I guess there was a spy who, and there have been some horrible instances of spies doing awful things. Like in the UK, they have spies having sex with activists, having children with them, selling people drugs, doing all sorts of awful things. And the government can just say, "Oh, sorry, we don't know anything about this spy." Yeah, it's funny. Seems like there was a spy who was sending us information and telling us exactly what we're going to do, giving us all your documents. We don't know who he was because it happens to be, it's a private security official employed by a corporation. And sometimes the government even funds it. So the government's still funding it, a private contractor, to violate our rights and do all sorts of unethical things. And it's just one of the most shocking things to me about all these people who say, like, how dare you do these things that break the law? Don't you believe in the rule of law? Yes, we believe in the rule of law. That's precisely why we're doing what we're doing, because the government isn't just asleep at the wheel. It is outright corrupt. It is working with the industry to violate our rights and the rights of animals. And sometimes the only way to rectify that more fundamental violation of the rule of law is for us to engage in direct action.
Right. And then we, like with Adair Pork, I knew I wanted to take it all the way. I wanted the court case to come. I wanted to be able to present the evidence in court. And then at the last minute...
And they dropped the case.
They dropped the case. Yeah. And then that prevents all that evidence from coming out into the public record. You've got to think that it's, conspiring. Industry is conspiring with the justice system and, changing their mind. Because initially they're horrified. Industry is horrified. How dare this... and I'm named in all sorts of industry publications as being the one who... goes in and, steals animals, because animals are property. And that's the other thing, isn't it? no intrinsic worth in their own right. They're deemed to be property and inside private buildings, which makes it really difficult to expose. Because first of all, you're walking into some private property, and then, the system is completely broken, and that's what we do. What we do, we do direct action to show what is possible.
Yeah.
It's funny. Talking about infiltrators, I kind of never almost talk about infiltrators within the groups that I am, because I find that it builds distrust amongst activists. I've been in a situation where people are accused of being an insider, and it's awful. Those rumors take hold. And I think you basically have to trust the people that you work with. Otherwise, you'd get paranoid, wouldn't you? And you wouldn't do anything because you think that people are just there to kind of, snitch on you. So I tend to trust and get to know the people. For the teams that we were in, we'd get to know the people, we get to know the families. But at some time, you just have to go ahead with the action. You can't get too paranoid about the people are around you.
This is one of the most exceptional things about you, Jenny, is the degree to which you trust the people around you and the good faith you have for other activists. And that's not just in the actions you've done, your ability to hire people to join you in them, but in your approach to infighting. I mean, there's so many conflicts in the movement that you and I have certainly experienced and been a part of. And you've always just done such an extraordinary job. So we just had a little snafu with my headphones, but I've got new headphones. You were talking about just how absurd this entire system is and how broken it is, and the power of direct action to change that. I guess my last question for you is, why the hell are not more people doing this? Because even your case was such an extraordinary success in that they came after you so hard. All these industry publications are accusing you of being a criminal. You get your home raided. And I guess maybe I'm answering my own question, why are more people doing this? Because who wants to be in all these industry publications and have their home raided? But at the end of the day, not only did they dismiss all the charges because they realized, if we go to trial, we're going to talk about prolapses. We're going to talk about slash and grab. We're going to talk about these awful things that Jenny saw inside this farm. We can't allow that to happen. But they dismissed the case, and one of the most important publications in the entire nation of Canada says, that there's a victory for pig activists. And the quote, which I still think is just one of the most amazing quotes in anything that's been written about open rescue, is the Crown is recognizing the right to rescue as a legal form of protest. That when there's an animal in distress and you try to help them, that's just legal. That's what implicitly the Crown is recognizing. And that is a game changer. If the legal system evolves to recognize when there's a suffering animal, you can help them. Well, guess what? There are billions of suffering animals. I mean, every single one of the animals is suffering, but even if you only count the animals who are suffering from violations of the industry's own policies, prolapses, pneumonia, Staphylococcus aureus, greasy pig disease, all the horrible things you and I have seen, even if you only count those animals, we're still talking about, in North America, billions of animals who can be rescued. And if we actually had the right to rescue them, we could just shut down all these industries 100%.
Right.
Because if activists were just entitled to go in, and your cases and my cases have shown, and even the media has acknowledged, and I had a New York Times op-ed too, right after mine. So the biggest paper in Canada, the biggest paper in the world, the New York Times, saying we have a right to rescue animals. And so the thing that I'm struggling with, and this is why we're even starting the show, is why are not more people doing this? Do you have an answer to this?
Wow. I wish I did.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I'm confused.
I know. I don't know. We should be. And some activists might not like open rescue. They might think that it's not the right way to do it. But then I don't hear of people going in ALF style and taking animals out.
Yeah.
I'm pretty connected in the animal rights scene, and
yeah, it's not happening.
I don't think it's happening. And yet, well, as well, we're in the legal system, aren't we? And it's not cheap. I've actually been at a lawyer conference in Canada. I specifically wanted to present at the lawyer conference, and one of my points was, wouldn't it be great if all the lawyers would kind of band together and maybe start a fund for activists, and then the stress of raising a lot of money to have lawyers represent you in a court.
Yeah, it's hard.
It's hard. And also sanctuary space. With the last occupation of a pig farm, I wasn't the key organizer, and it wasn't my province. And there was no sanctuary space.
Yeah, so you couldn't save anybody. Yeah,
we couldn't save anybody. And sanctuaries are really reluctant as well to take animals. It's like the railroad for rescued animals, isn't it? The Underground Railroad.
Yeah, it is.
Like when I've kind of got a little list, we managed to get ducks out, baby ducklings, from a farm, and I had space for like 6. I organized space for 6 ducklings, and when the actives were inside the place, it's like, oh my God, we have to rescue more. So we end up with over 20.
Wow.
And finding sanctuary space, and do you let the sanctuaries know that these are stolen goods, because then they could get into trouble too, and you really don't want that, So it's a complex situation where
there are some nuances for sure. This is why everyone needs to come to the open rescue experience,
right?
Because we train you in what to do in all these scenarios.
Yep.
How to find sanctuaries, how to find lawyers. I will say 2 things. One is, in my experience, when you approach the sanctuary in the right way, every sanctuary wants a beautiful story of rescue. This is why they started the sanctuaries. This is the reason for existence.
Yeah.
And so if you approach the sanctuary in the right way, my experience is most sanctuaries are willing to help. And with respect to lawyers, all of my best lawyers have been free, which is kind of amazing, but it's true. Like, actually, and even when we paid them. So my lawyer in Utah, I represented myself in the case, which that's easy because I don't have, I don't have to pay myself. But for years, I had another lawyer representing me named Elizabeth Hunt. And I had to beg and plead for her to take my money because she worked so hard on the case for so many years. I felt bad about the fact that we weren't paying her because she was working so hard. I mean, she spent hundreds of hours every year on this case, even leading up to trial.
Right.
I mean, she wrote just devastating briefs that were extremely important for us to get the evidence we needed into the trial. And I had to beg her to take my money because she cared. And those are always the best lawyers.
That's a really good point. Because for the last trial, we had an amazing team of, 8 lawyers, and they were all pro bono. They were all free too. But not every lawyer can afford to do that. They have, they have staff to pay, and
No, a budget still helps. I'm not saying money doesn't help.
Yeah.
All right, Jenny. Well, any last thoughts? We've been going for almost 2 hours. What else can we do to get people out into the field to help some of these animals? Because I think your story is an inspiring one, and it shows the power. Look, if a dork like me and a mild-mannered Brit like you can get in the national media from rescuing an animal, then everybody can. All of you listening to this, no more excuses. Because look how innocent and mild-mannered Jenny is. She hardly looks like a radical animal rights activist taking direct action, and she's able to do it.
And it's funny. Go on. Sorry, finish that.
No, I was just saying, I am the biggest dork you could possibly imagine. And, I spent my entire childhood playing with computers and books, not even with other human beings, scared of my own shadow. And here I am rescuing animals. So if you're doing it, I'm doing it, then everybody can do it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's funny, as well, outside of open rescue, for animal rights, I've been tackled to the ground by the police. I've had security, hold me in a vice grip and almost break my wrist. But activism doesn't need to be that way.
Doesn't.
I've started with a group, AR chats, like animal rights chats, trying to get people, more inspired and more involved.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to strategize and we're going to plan campaigns, and we're going to do that in person. So maybe that's one way of rebuilding, because I feel that, for the last few years, we've had COVID, we've had conflict.
Yeah. Huge conflicts.
Huge conflicts, and we really need to be trying to build up the animal rights scene again. And
we
maybe
need Tom to catch to come back.
Yes.
Tom, if you're listening to this, make sure you send this to Tom. Tom needs to get back. Tom, you can be a difficult person, but the most difficult thing about you is you're not doing organizing, and you need to be an organizer.
Thank you, Wayne.
Among others. Tom's not the only one, but he's the one in Toronto. I really want him to get back involved.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, Tom was, kind of one of the leads for the direct action of our chapter in Toronto for many years, and he's dynamite. He's so motivated, so smart, so organized, was a great leader, and he departed because of conflicts. So.
Yes. And I will often try and be a mediator in conflicts, because I feel for both sides, and it's tough. Sometimes you make the wrong choice, and sometimes, you can't fix what has happened. But I always welcome people who want to come back and who get active, and I hold no hard feelings for people who say, "Oh, I'm not that active right now," and it's like, don't feel bad.
Yeah.
Come back. You're always welcome to join. Whatever we do, whether it's a dramatic action or whether it's, leafleting in the street. I work with lots of organizations now. I say work, I never want to get paid. I'm a volunteer, and even if we get screamed at on the street saying, get a life, get a job, I think we should all be active. And direct action doesn't need that you get arrested. Direct action can mean that you're just speaking out for animals, you're just joining whatever organization you feel comfortable with, or doing something on your own, finding your own strengths. There's something called everyday activism. I print them up myself, business cards, which outreach cards. There's so many ways, you make art, you have t-shirts with artwork on. Shall I just, there you go.
Yeah. Oh, who made that one?
I drew that one.
It's beautiful.
That's one of the pigs at Pig Trial 4.
From poor Greg.
Right.
Yeah. It's so sad.
Yeah.
But also
But
so
honestly,
important that for people to hear that message, that we can continue to do activism. Not everyone has to take the same risk that you've taken. We can survive even the internal obstacles, because of people like you. And I think we need more people like you, Jenny, not just your bravery, but your willingness to mediate conflicts, to find space for other activists in a movement where too often you've got big mouths like me taking up too much space. So we need more Jenny McQueens, which is why I'm really glad you're continuing to do what you do, and why it's really sad I can't come to see you and Peter anymore. Let's hope I win this appeal so I can come to Canada. I know. So they let you out one time, right? And it's very unclear why there's no rhyme or reason to it, is there, for why, when you're allowed to come in and when you're not?
No, I've been refused entry twice now, which means that I'm flagged. So I really need, I could approach a lawyer and pay money, and maybe they would, know the right words to use to get me across again. But I might try it again. I might just go on a normal, shopping trip to Buffalo or something. And
come visit your friend, me. Right. You can always say, I'm visiting my friend Wayne. He's in California, but I'm trussing in Buffalo. I'll drive over
Two terrorists having a chat.
Yeah, that's going to go well. Maybe don't say you're coming to visit your friend Wayne. Or at least don't use my last name.
You kind of say, how have I ended up not in prison yet? Likewise, you've done extremely well in evading.
I know.
Yeah, because we're on the right side of history. This is the thing, isn't it? We're the compassionate folks who care enough to take action, who want to rescue animals. Yeah. We're on the right side of history in whatever way, and we're not violent.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think this is the other thing that makes you different and makes me different too. Confidence. We just believe in the message.
Yeah.
And it's direct action is a very optimistic strategy because you take direct action and then basically place your freedom and sometimes your life on the line and allow the public and the powers that be to decide what they will do with you because you believe the message has power, that people will be swayed. And, and I think you and I both believe that. And that's one of the reasons we've been willing to take the risks we've taken. And for many years, it worked out very well for me. And, you know, although I am a convicted felon now, I think it's still going to work out well.
Likewise. Woo.
I know. Join the crowd. It's good times. Okay, Jenny, thank you so much for chatting with me. I know it's super late. Please send my love to Peter and Anita and all the other actors in Toronto and let them know if I have this conviction reverse, I'm going to come in Toronto. I'm going to do another open rescue training.
Amazing.
And we can do it together.
You're always welcome here, Wayne, honestly.
Sounds good.
Always.
Let's make it happen.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, Jenny.
Thanks, Wayne.